Hey, how's it going? And welcome back to Consuming Cinema, a show about making and pairing food and drinks from popular movies and TV shows. Today, in honor of Valentine's Day, we are making a martini with minestrone from Moonstruck. If you haven't seen Moonstruck, it's a 1987 Norman Jewison romantic comedy which won 3 Academy Awards, including Best Actress, Best Original Screenplay, as well as Best Supporting Actress. The movie follows Loretta Castorini, an Italian-American widow who, while she still believes in life after love, receives arguably the worst marriage proposal of all time from her aloof boyfriend Johnny Camilleri, who is about to leave to take care of his sick mother over in Italy. But before leaving, Johnny asks his new fiancée to invite to their wedding his estranged brother he hasn't spoken to in over 5 years, named Ronnie, a recluse baker who blames Johnny for getting his hand maimed in a bread slicer.
I lost my hand! I lost my bride! Johnny has his hand! Johnny has his bride!
Then, after Loretta makes Ronnie some steak and spaghetti, the two fall unexpectedly and madly in love. But Moonstruck is a movie actually about several different relationships, and similarly features a plethora of amazing moments of spectacular-looking food and delicious-looking drinks. And in the scene we're talking about today, Loretta's mother, Rose, rightfully suspecting that her husband Cosmo is having an affair, dines alone at the same local restaurant Loretta was proposed to at, and there orders a
martini, no ice, 2 olives.
Then, after watching a lethario professor get dumped by his much younger student, Rose asks the man to join her for dinner, where she then orders a bowl of minestrone soup, and then asks the man a pressing question on her mind.
Why do men chase women?
Listen, you want to know why I chase women? I teach these classes I taught for 1,000,000 years. Spontaneity went out of it for me a long time ago. Except sometimes I look up and I'll see a fresh, beautiful young face. And she catches on that I'm just this burned out old gas bag, and she's as fresh and bright and full of promise as moonlight in a martini.
What you don't know about women is a lot.
Our minestrone starts with a medium pot for our beans and a large pot for our soup. To start our beans, we're gonna need 8 ounces of cannellini beans, which is the signature bean in minestrone soup. To prep your cannellini beans, you will need to soak them overnight for at least 8 hours, which I did with the addition of a bay leaf in the water. Then I strained and rinsed these beans before adding them to a medium pot. Then you're gonna wanna fill this pot with water at least 1 inch above the beans. The more water you use, the more broth you'll have later. We're also gonna add a few cloves of garlic, which I've just smashed up with my hand. Now we want to bring our beans to a boil before reducing them to a simmer to cook. And while I did, I prematurely poured olive oil into our soup pot. Then, once our beans have simmered for a bit, we can start our soup. Now's the time to add some olive oil, or in my case, more olive oil to your big pot, followed by 1 yellow onion, chopped, and then we're just gonna let those onions sweat down a little bit before adding 3 to 4 stalks of celery. Make sure you always include the leaves on the celery because those are the best part and have the most flavor. Then we're gonna cut up 3 thin carrots, cut into small circles, which I actually just found out is called the rondelle cut. And then stir this all together, followed by 3 cloves of crushed garlic. And we'll stir that in as well. Then, if you'd like, you can deglaze the pan with the vermouth that we'll be using later. In my case, I'm actually using a white wine aperitif called Cochi Americano, but more on that later. Next, we're gonna add 1 russet potato, peeled and cut into medium-sized cubes, as well as a little bit of salt and a little bit of freshly cracked pepper. Next, we're gonna add a 1/4 cup of chopped Italian parsley, followed by 1 28-ounce can of tomatoes, preferably San Marzano tomatoes if you can find them. And you want to just break up these tomatoes with your hands into the pot before then dumping in the rest of their juices. And mix that all together as well. And then we're going to add about a can's worth of water, which I actually put in gradually to be safe, but you can just put in the whole can. And give it a little stir there. Next, we will add 2 bay leaves. Now we're going to cover this pot with an appropriate lid and then bring the soup to a boil. And while the soup cooks, I want to mention a few things. This recipe was inspired by Grandma Gina over at Bon Appetiti, so check out her channel here, and I'll also put a link to her minestrone video in the description below. I also wanted to mention that this is actually the first subscriber-suggested video on my channel, and was requested by my lovely Aunt Jeanne, so shout out to Aunt Jeanne, and keep those recommendations for new videos coming in the comments below. And lastly, I'll just note that I actually filmed this entire episode twice, because the first time I wasn't satisfied with how my beans turned out. So if you need to cook your beans separately and then take them off the heat to have more control, by all means do so. And after our soup is cooked a bit more, we're then going to add 2 cups of green beans, followed by a whole head of leafy greens. In my case, I'm using Swiss chard. Grandma Jeanne used escarole. Then we will press down those greens into the soup and cover it again to allow those veggies to cook down. And in the meantime, we'll do a little taste test of our beans to check their doneness, and they are just about there. And after about 5 to 10 more minutes, it's now time to combine our 2 pots together. So what you want to do is pour all of those beans and their juices into the bigger soup pot. Then we're just going to stir everything together and make sure it's nicely incorporated. Then we're going to add one more thing to our soup, a rind of Parmesan cheese. And what this will do is just thicken up the soup ever so slightly and give it a nice velvety texture. Now just cook your soup down to your desired broth level. If you don't want the liquid to cook out, cook the rest of your soup covered, and if you want liquid to cook out, cook it uncovered. And another little taste test for seasoning, and adding any necessary salt and pepper you may need. And then all that's left to do is remove the bay leaves as well as the Parmesan rind. Now we're just gonna head back over and make our martini. Contrary to what James Bond likes, we don't usually want to shake our martini. Our martini starts in a mixing glass. To our mixing glass, we will add 2 dashes of bitters. In my case, I'm using Fee's grapefruit bitters, but you can really use any kind of fruity bitters you'd like. Orange bitters work nicely as well. Followed by 3 ounces of gin, preferably a London Dry. Here I'm using Ford's. And then 1 ounce of dry vermouth. As mentioned earlier, I'm using Cocchi Americano, and because it's an Italian brand, I wanted to use it for this movie. Really, a martini is a drink that you can use whatever ingredients you really want in. It's very much a cocktail that's in the eye of the beholder. Then we're just gonna add some ice to our mixing glass and stir it all up. Ideally, you should really use 1 single ice cube here, like I actually did the first time I filmed this episode. And to plate our minestrone, we'll just serve ourselves a couple of scoops of soup, and then we'll just top that off with some freshly grated Parmesan, as well as some chopped Italian parsley. Not that much parsley though. And for our martini, all you need is a chilled martini glass, and we'll strain our cocktail into our martini glass. You may notice I didn't double strain this time, and that's because without shaking it, we don't get as many ice shards. And Rose specifically asked for 2 olives, so we will grab a couple of our martini olives, and then skewer them, and then garnish our martini with them. And at long last, your martini with minestrone is finally done. Now there's nothing left to do but to taste it. So we'll start with a few bites of our minestrone. We'll make sure to get a bite of all those delicious vegetables, and I gotta say, this is an absolutely incredible minestrone recipe, and all credit goes to Grandma Jeanne. So again, please check out her channel in the description below. There are really few soups as comforting as minestrone. It's delicate, it's warm, it's inviting, it just makes your soul feel happy, kind of like the movie Moonstruck. But how does this minestrone go with a martini? Well, while I sorta wasn't expecting it, the martini and minestrone go surprisingly well together. And this particular pairing as a whole is defined by its simplicity. They don't have a lot of ingredients, and those few ingredients need little to no embellishment to be delicious. And this is both a very warming, comforting food and a warming, comforting drink. Unlike Grandma Jeanne, I made this particular minestrone without pasta, mainly for the SEO value of saying gluten-free. But if your Valentine should want some pasta, simply make your choice of noodles separately and then add some minestrone over top, preferably a bit more neatly than I did here. And while there are several different ways to do both minestrone and a martini, whatever way you choose for either, I guarantee you that your Valentine will love it, and this pairing will be worthy of 2 thumbs up. If you like the channel, please like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. Please leave any video suggestions in the comments below. Full recipes will be included in a link in the video description. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Consuming Cinema. And don't forget to join us next week when we make a pairing from The Simpsons. Thank you for watching.